Hey guys, it's me, Rich. Now you're about to see something that almost no one in the mainstream media wants you to focus on, and it will change how you think about what recently happened in Minneapolis. If you have been listening to Minnesota Democrats this week, you might think the most important event in America is a single ICE shooting caught on video. You would think that the facts are settled. You would also think that the villain has already been chosen. You would think the only moral response is outrage, protests, and denunciations of federal law enforcement. That is exactly the reaction that they want. But if you stick with me through this video, I'm going to point out a pattern that once you see it, you cannot unsee it. The Democrats in Minnesota are right now trying to use this pattern to save themselves yet again. And we're not going to let it happen. Let's get into it. Hey guys, welcome back to RPW Media. My name's Rich. And I'm going to take you through a series of diversions that form a pattern that are used by Democrats time after time to take the focus off of them when they're about to get caught doing something really wrong. Again, if you've been listening to Minnesota Democrats this week, you would think that the most important event in America is a single ICE shooting caught on video. According to them, the facts are already settled. The villain has been chosen and cast. And the only moral response is outrage, protests, and denunciations of federal law enforcement. Now, that reaction is not organic. It is engineered. And I would argue that it is the Democrat politicians who engineered the outrage. Let's start with what we know. An ICE agent was nearly run over by an SUV during a federal law enforcement operation. The SUV hit the ICE agent. Seconds later, the woman driving that vehicle was dead. Now, that's tragic. But it's also not complicated at all when the vehicle is used as a weapon. And that seems to be done a lot more by the left these days. Law enforcement does not get the luxury of waiting around to see how things turn out. Now, here's where things start to feel strange. Minnesota Democrats immediately declared the federal account of what happened as false, demonstrably false, they say. Even Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer declared it is an outrage and that the story the president is telling is false. Now, they told the public not to believe what their own eyes appear to confirm. Everyone by now saw the video of the incident from multiple angles. But the Democrats demanded investigations before facts were even assembled. They even called for federal agents to leave the state entirely. And then Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey escalated it further by declaring that the ICE agent who shot Renee Good committed murder. He said he committed murder. He used the word. He also thought he was acting like a tough guy by throwing around an F-bomb publicly when demanding that ICE leave his city. Now, that's a big tell for a politician. When they throw around F-bombs like that, you should look into what he's really saying, because it was not confusion, anger, or despair. It was choreography. Now, if this feels a bit familiar, it should, because we have seen this exact maneuver before. For example, when Hillary Clinton was running for president against Donald Trump, people at that time went back and remembered something that she said during her Benghazi hearing, where she testified that she did absolutely nothing wrong. One of the things that was discovered during her testimony was that she had an illegal private email server. The reason it was illegal was because the Espionage Act says that you cannot have government documents outside of a government system. And it was proven that Clinton had classified documents on the private email server that she used as Secretary of State. Now, Hillary Clinton knew that this revelation could cost her not only the election, but her freedom. Because when you violate the Espionage Act, you could go to prison. So what did Hillary do? Did she come clean? Not on your life. She manufactured a story through an opposition research firm called Fusion GPS to claim that Donald Trump colluded with Vladimir Putin and Russia to win the election. It took nearly all of Trump's first term to finally get to the end of a special prosecutor investigation where he declared that there was just no evidence. This is what Democrats do. There is a pattern. To get the focus off themselves, they create distractions. But this next one was the first time that I had ever seen the Democrats create an outrage machine based on pure, unadulterated lies. In 2005, during Hurricane Katrina, Democrats flooded the media with claims that President George W. Bush did not care about Black Americans. The story hardened fast. FEMA became the villain. The federal government was accused of racism and abandonment in New Orleans. But almost no one talked about what was happening quietly in the background. Before Katrina hit, the federal government was preparing to audit how Louisiana officials used federal money allocated for levee improvements. Those funds were overseen by the Army Corps of Engineers. Local Democratic leadership did not want those audits. They did not want the scrutiny. Reports later showed that money meant for flood protection was redirected elsewhere. Funds were used on projects like repairing Mardi Gras damage around the city, renovating fountains, subsidizing golf courses, and covering speculative ventures tied to casinos and marinas. Then the storm hit. Just like that, scrutiny of the fraud by Democrats in charge vanished. The audits disappeared. Accountability died. Outrage replaced facts. The distraction worked. Now, fast forward to Minnesota in January 2026. Right now, the federal government is investigating some of the largest fraud schemes in modern American history. According to the Minnesota Reformer, these cases involve billions of dollars, social services programs, politically protected nonprofits, years of oversight deliberately avoided under the excuse that scrutiny itself is racism. We have seen the stories about multiple phony daycare centers. Nick Shirley actually went out to many of these daycare centers and found out there's no one in them, but they're getting millions of dollars each year. There were also fake autism centers. That was another scam that is rampant throughout Minnesota, specifically in Minneapolis, and specifically among the Somali community, which Ilhan Omar, representative of that district, is shining. So the scrutiny hits the highest levels of the state as well. Governor Tim Walz had to put out his re-election campaign and step down because the inside scoop is that the Democratic Party in Minnesota didn't even have him listed at the top of the ticket anymore because of this discovery of fraud. Now, the Department of Justice has been gearing up to descend upon Minnesota to learn about all the blatant fraud that has been going on for years. There have been stories that Governor Walz was told about the litany of fraud, and he turned a blind eye to it. He did nothing, allegedly, because he didn't want to upset the voter base, which were all the people who were involved in the scams in the first place. And suddenly, right on schedule, Minnesota Democrats discover a new emergency. The ICE shooting of Renee Good becomes the centerpiece of outrage. Politicians go off the rails. Media piles on. Emotions flood the zone. What rarely gets mentioned is that Good was active in a Minneapolis ICE Watch activist network. These groups trained members to observe and confront federal agents. They taught tactics meant to impede enforcement operations. And that's exactly what she was doing on the day she was shot in an act of self-defense by a federal agent. Now, that context matters. Just as the American people were scratching their heads the minute the Democrats lied about the Bush White House's FEMA poorly serving black sections of New Orleans in an effort to take a federal audit that would expose the fraud and the Big Easy off the front pages, it looks like they think they can get away with it again, only this time in Minneapolis. This is not about justice for a woman who made a fatal decision. This is about narrative control, guys. This is about flooding the public with noise so no one notices where the money went or who let it disappear. Are the Democrats doing this to buy time so that they can destroy evidence against them? We may never know. But one thing that's clear is that they are lying about what happened with the ICE shooting. We all watched the videos. We saw Renee Good in her SUV move toward the ICE agent. We saw that move escalate the encounter. Federal officials said she attempted to drive into him before shots were fired. That is not an interpretation. That is video evidence that we've all seen. And that evidence is politically inconvenient for the Democrats who are about to be caught with massive fraud. So the Democrats are right now trying to convince America that Trump's ICE is out killing people for peacefully protesting. They always said things about ICE that are bold-faced lies, that they're disappearing people, that they're deporting American citizens, which is kind of stupid when you think about it. Public officials are calling it murder before any of the evidence is actually collected and gone over. The stakes are enormous. Exposure would mean accountability, so the outrage machine turns on. Emotion replaces facts and accusations replace evidence. A federal agent does not lose his right to self-defense because Democrats find it inconvenient. Video does not stop being evidence because it disrupts their storyline. Fraud does not stop being fraud because outrage makes people uncomfortable. This is how distractions work. When investigators get close, distractions get loud. Now, the upside is this. Americans are starting to recognize this pattern. Distraction only works when people stop paying attention. And this time, more people are watching closely. So tell me what you think in the comments below. I love hearing from you guys. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.